My name is Jack. I used to think I had a pretty normal life. I'm 38, living in a small town in Ohio, a place where everyone knows everyone. I've been married to Emily for 10 years. We have 2 kids, a boy named Michael, 8, and a girl named Sophie, 5. I work as an IT specialist for a local manufacturing company, a job I've had for the past 5 years. It's nothing glamorous, but it pays the bills, and I can provide for my family. I met Emily back in college, and we were inseparable from the start. She was studying to be a nurse, and I was knee-deep in computer science courses. We got married a year after graduation and settled down in this town because it was close to her parents. Life was pretty routine. I'd get up, go to work, come home, and spend time with Emily and the kids. We weren't rich, but we weren't struggling either. Emily worked part-time at the local hospital, which gave her enough time to take care of the kids and manage the house. Things started to change about a year ago. Emily seemed more distant. At first I thought it was just the stress of balancing work and home life, but then I noticed she was spending more time on her phone, often texting or on social media late into the night. I didn't think much of it. We all need our space, right? One evening I came home from work, and Emily was unusually cheerful. She told me she had reconnected with an old friend from high school, a guy named Tom. He had recently moved back to town and was going through a rough patch. Emily said she wanted to help him out, maybe introduce him to some people and get him back on his feet. I didn't see any harm in it. I mean, what kind of husband would I be if I got jealous every time my wife wanted to help a friend? Weeks turned into months, and Tom became a regular presence in our lives. He'd come over for dinner, help out with odd jobs around the house, and even babysit the kids when Emily and I wanted a night out. He seemed like a nice enough guy. He was friendly, polite, and great with the kids. I started to think of him as a friend too. But then, little things started to bother me. Emily would cancel plans with me to spend time with Tom. She'd make excuses about how he needed her help, or how he was feeling down and she couldn't just leave him alone. I started to feel like a third wheel in my own marriage. One night, Emily told me she was going to a high school reunion. It seemed harmless enough, but something didn't sit right with me. She was overly excited, and when I asked if I could come along, she hesitated. She said it was just going to be a small gathering of her old classmates and that I wouldn't have a good time. I shrugged it off, but a nagging feeling stayed with me. That night, after putting the kids to bed, I decided to check Emily's laptop. I know it sounds bad, but I needed to know if my suspicions were just in my head. She had left it on the kitchen counter, and as I opened it, my heart pounded in my chest. I went through her emails, social media, and finally, her messages. What I found shattered me. There were messages between Emily and Tom, messages that left no room for doubt. They had been seeing each other behind my back for months. They talked about how much they missed each other, how they couldn't wait to be together. I felt sick. I didn't confront her that night. I couldn't. I needed time to process what I had discovered. I spent the night on the couch, staring at the ceiling, wondering where it all went wrong. The next day, I took a day off work claiming I was sick. I dropped the kids off at school and decided to follow Emily. She had told me she was going to run some errands and then visit Tom to help him with some paperwork. I parked a few blocks away from Tom's place and watched as she went inside. I waited for what felt like an eternity before she came out, laughing and holding Tom's hand. That was the confirmation I needed. When she got home that evening, I was waiting for her. I asked her how her day was, and she gave me the usual story. That's when I showed her the messages. She went pale, and for a moment, I thought she was going to faint. She tried to deny it at first, but there was no way out. I had the proof. The confrontation was ugly. Dear viewers, more than 90% watch my content without subscribing. If you still have not subscribed, then I ask you to do so. For me, this is the best motivation to continue. She cried, I yelled, and the kids woke up and started crying too. It was a mess. She admitted to the affair, saying it just happened, and that she didn't mean for it to go this far. She said she still loved me and begged for another chance. I moved out that night. I packed a bag and went to stay with a friend. The next few days were a blur. I called in sick to work and spent most of my time at my friend's place trying to figure out what to do next. Emily called and texted constantly, apologizing and asking me to come home. I didn't know if I could ever forgive her. The betrayal cut too deep. I eventually went back home, not because I forgave her, but because I needed to be there for my kids. We agreed to try marriage counseling, though I wasn't sure if it would help. Trust was broken, and I didn't know if it could ever be repaired. But for the sake of our children, I had to try. The first few sessions were awkward. The counselor, a middle-aged woman named Dr. Harris, tried to get us to talk about our feelings, but I found it hard to open up. Emily was more willing, crying and saying how sorry she was, how she wished she could take it all back. Dr. Harris suggested we spend time together, just the two of us, to try and rebuild our relationship. We went on dates, talked more, and for a while it seemed like we were making progress. But the trust was gone. Every time Emily got a text or a call, I wondered if it was Tom. Every time she was late coming home, I suspected the worst. It was exhausting, and I was constantly on edge. About 6 months into our counseling, Emily dropped another bombshell. She was pregnant. I was stunned. We hadn't been intimate in months, not since before I found out about the affair. She swore it was mine, but I couldn't shake the doubt. I insisted on a paternity test, and she reluctantly agreed. The waiting period for the results was agonizing. When they finally came, I was both relieved and heartbroken. The baby was mine. Emily had broken things off with Tom shortly after I found out about the affair. But the damage was done. I couldn't look at her the same way. I wanted to make it work for the sake of our kids and the baby on the way, but every day was a struggle. I felt like I was living with a stranger, someone who had betrayed me in the worst possible way. The months passed, and Emily gave birth to a beautiful baby girl. We named her Grace. Holding her in my arms, I felt a surge of love and a glimmer of hope. Maybe, just maybe, we could get through this. But as time went on, it became clear that the scars were too deep. The constant doubt and suspicion were tearing me apart. One evening, after putting the kids to bed, Emily and I had a long talk. She apologized again, saying she understood if I couldn't forgive her. She said she loved me and wanted us to be a family, but she couldn't live with the constant tension and distrust. She suggested a trial separation, hoping that some time apart might help us heal. I agreed, though it broke my heart. I moved out again, this time to a small apartment nearby. We told the kids it was temporary, that Mommy and Daddy needed some time to think. They were confused and upset, and it killed me to see them like that. The separation was hard. I missed the kids terribly, and I missed the life we had built together. But I knew it was for the best. We continued with counseling, both individually and as a couple, trying to find a way to move forward. It's been a year since I moved out. Emily and I are still separated, but we're on better terms. We've managed to co-parent effectively, and the kids are adjusting. I still have moments of anger and sadness, but I'm working through them. Emily has been patient, giving me the space I need to heal. We're taking things one day at a time, not rushing into any decisions. Whether we end up together or apart, I'm determined to be the best father I can be for my kids. They deserve nothing less. This is my story. A story of betrayal and heartbreak, but also a story of resilience and hope. Life doesn't always go the way we plan, but we can choose how we respond to the challenges we face. And that's what I'm trying to do, one day at a time. It's been a couple of months since I moved back home. The initial shock of Emily's betrayal has worn off, but the pain is still there. I'm finding it hard to trust her, and the constant suspicion is taking a toll on me. We're still going to counseling, but I'm not sure if it's helping. I'm trying to be strong for the kids, but it's tough. One night, I came home from work to find Emily and Tom having an argument in our living room. I could hear their voices raised from outside the house. When I walked in, they both went silent. Emily looked guilty and Tom looked angry. I asked what was going on, and Emily said that Tom had come over to apologize for everything. I didn't believe her, but I didn't want to start a fight in front of the kids. After Tom left, Emily and I had a huge argument. She accused me of being paranoid and not giving her a chance to prove that she had changed. I accused her of lying and betraying me again. The argument got heated, and I ended up leaving the house to cool off. I spent the night at a friend's place, trying to figure out what to do next. The next day, I decided to take a few days off work and clear my head. I needed to get away from everything and everyone. I packed a bag and drove to a cabin in the woods that my family used to visit when I was a kid. Dear viewers, I ask you to subscribe to the channel under this video. I will be very grateful to you. It was a place where I always felt at peace, and I hoped it would help me sort out my thoughts. The cabin was as I remembered it, old but cozy. I spent the first day just relaxing and trying to clear my mind. The second day, I went for a hike in the woods. As I walked, I thought about my life and how it had turned out. I realized that I couldn't keep living like this. I needed to make a decision, one way or the other. When I got back to the cabin, I had a message from Emily. She was worried about me and wanted to know if I was okay. I called her back and told her where I was. She said she understood and that she hoped I could find some peace. We talked for a while, and for the first time in a long time, it felt like we were really communicating. After a few days at the cabin, I felt a little better. I still didn't know what to do about my marriage, but I knew I couldn't keep running away from my problems. I packed up and headed back home, determined to face whatever came next. When I got home, things seemed to be going well. Emily and I were getting along better, and the kids were happy to have me back. But the peace didn't last long. A few weeks later, I got a call from a friend who worked at the hospital where Emily worked. He told me that he had seen Emily and Tom together, looking very cozy. He said he didn't want to get involved, but he thought I should know. I confronted Emily that night. She denied everything, saying that my friend must have been mistaken. But I could see the guilt in her eyes. We had another huge argument, and this time, it got physical. I didn't mean to, but in a fit of rage, I shoved her. She fell and hit her head on the coffee table. I was horrified and immediately called an ambulance. Emily was taken to the hospital with a concussion. The police came and questioned me, and I told them everything. They took me into custody, and I spent the night in jail. I was charged with domestic violence and released on bail the next day. I felt like my life was spiraling out of control. Emily stayed with her parents while she recovered, and I was given a restraining order, preventing me from seeing her or the kids. I felt like a monster, but I knew I had to take responsibility for my actions. I started going to anger management classes and continued with counseling. A few weeks later, Emily filed for divorce. I was devastated, but I knew it was inevitable. We couldn't go on like this. The divorce process was messy and painful. Emily's lawyer painted me as an abusive husband, and I struggled to defend myself. The court granted her full custody of the kids, and I was left with nothing. I moved into a small apartment and tried to rebuild my life. I focused on my job and tried to stay positive, but it was hard. I missed my kids terribly and felt like a failure as a husband and a father. I tried to see the kids as much as I could, but it was difficult with the restraining order and the court's restrictions. One day, I ran into Tom at the grocery store. He smirked at me and made a snide comment about how he was now taking care of my family. I snapped. I lunged at him, and we ended up in a full-blown fistfight right there in the store. Security broke us up, and I was arrested again. This time, the charges were more serious, and I faced the possibility of jail time. In court, Tom testified against me, saying that I had always been abusive and that he was just trying to help Emily and the kids. Emily also testified, saying that she was afraid for her safety and the safety of the kids. The judge didn't have much sympathy for me, and I was sentenced to 6 months in jail. Sitting in that cell, I had a lot of time to think about my life and where it had gone wrong. I realized that I had let my anger and jealousy consume me. I had pushed away the people I loved and destroyed my own life in the process. When I was released, I was determined to make amends, but I knew it wouldn't be easy. I tried to reach out to Emily and the kids, but she had moved on. She had a new life with Tom, and there was no place for me in it. I was a stranger to my own children, and it broke my heart. I continued with my anger management classes and counseling, trying to find a way to move forward. This is my story, a story of betrayal, violence, and loss. There is no happy ending here, no healing or redemption, just the harsh reality of a life destroyed by anger and mistrust. I can only hope that one day, I will find a way to make peace with myself and rebuild my life, one day at a time.